Hello and welcome back. I recently added a few items to my collection which date back to a shared history. So I thought I'd go over that history in this video today. And it starts with a character called Jim Barr, aka Bulletman, who first appeared in Nickel Comics #1 in 1940, created by Bill Parker and John Small. The adventures of the original Bulletman were published by Fawcett Comics, the comic company that also published the adventures of the original Captain Marvel, who is now known as Shazam. Jim Barr was the son of a police officer who was killed in the line of duty. After that tragic event, he vowed to fight crime. He worked as a ballistics investigator for the police department, and he was also a scientist that created something called the crime cure, a chemical formula that granted him extra strength and intelligence. Back in the 1940s, before the introduction of atomic energy into our society, many of the superheroes in the comics gained their superpowers through chemistry. Jim also developed something called a gravity regulator helmet, the bullet-shaped helmet that he wears atop his head that gives him the ability to fly and deflect bullets. He later granted those same superpowers to his fiancée and future wife, Susan Kent, who joined him in his adventures as Bullet Girl. Jim then used the same technology that he used to create his helmet to craft a collar for his dog Slug. Slug was also able to join in on the adventures as Bullet Dog. But unfortunately, Slug did not get the bullet-shaped helmet. What I have here is a reprint of some of the original 1940s Bulletman adventures. And this is published by a company called Classic Comics, who specialize in reprinting old public domain comics. We can see on the cover here is Jim Barr, Bulletman, Susan Kent, Bullet Girl, and his dog Slug. Comic book stories and art from the 1940s were certainly not as sophisticated as modern comics, but there is a certain charm to them. And I do love delving into the history of things. And many of the superheroes that we enjoy today have their origins back in the 1930s and 1940s. These classic comic reprints are very inexpensive. This digest-sized reprint was only $10, and they do look quite good. I believe these reprints have been sourced from original comics from the 1940s. They were scanned and cleaned up. And here we have a story featuring a villain called the Weeper, that you probably never heard of. I know who he is. The murderer who mourns his victims. So he kills you, then he cries for you. Nice guy. Fawcett Comics eventually went out of business, but in 1972, the Fawcett superhero characters were licensed by DC, and they were folded into the DC multiverse and said to live on Earth S. Bulletman and Bullet Girl teamed with Captain Marvel and other Fawcett heroes to form the Squadron of Justice during one of the Crisis crossover events with the Justice League in the early 1970s. The Fawcett characters were then folded into the DC Universe proper after the 1980s event Crisis on Infinite Earths, which saw the destruction of the multiverse. But after the events of another crisis, the Infinite Crisis, the multiverse was reestablished, and Bulletman and Bullet Girl wound up back on Earth S. Yes, DC continuity is a little bit confusing. Bulletman has not appeared in any other media except for one appearance in an episode of Batman: The Brave and the Bold animated series. And while there's never been an action figure of Bulletman, there has been one made of Bullet Girl. She is part of Fresh Monkey Fiction's Amazing Heroes line. That's the toy line that emulates the 1980s Mattel Secret Wars toy line, which featured the Marvel superheroes. Fresh Monkey Fiction's Amazing Heroes line features both independent comic characters and comic book characters in the public domain, like Bullet Girl. So this Bullet Girl figure is a simple 5 POA figure, and as I said, she's part of an all-female wave of figures that was sold exclusively through Fresh Monkey Fiction's website as well as Big Bad Toy Store. And this is designed to look like how a female figure may have looked in that original Mattel Secret Wars line. Mattel did not have any female figures in that line, but this is how Fresh Monkey Fiction imagines they would have looked like. In 2005, writer Grant Morrison introduced the character of Bulleteer in an event called Seven Soldiers for DC Comics. Bulleteer drew on the legacy of the original Bulletman and Bullet Girl. Bulleteer is actually Alex Harrower, who was married to a research scientist named Lance, who developed a metal skin that could combine with collagen, turning skin indestructible. Lance tested his so-called smart skin on himself, hoping to become a superhero modeled after the original Bulletman. But unfortunately, he suffocated to death in the process. Before he died, he touched his wife Alex and transferred the smart skin to her. Her life was saved at the hospital, but her transformation became permanent. This sends Alex into a depression, which is exacerbated when she learns that one of the reasons her husbands wanted to give them both superpowers was because superheroes were his sexual fetish. Look, it was early 2000s, it was Grant Morrison, this is what they were doing, okay? After surviving a suicide attempt, Alex helps save the survivors of a train wreck, and the people she saved regard her as a superhero. After that, Alex decides to use her superpowers to help others as the Bulleteer. After the Seven Soldiers event, Bulleteer made sporadic appearances, mostly helping out the Justice League. And she remains part of the DC Universe in the post-Rebirth era. Next, let's talk about a Bulletman that some of you may be more familiar with. In the mid-1970s, Hasbro introduced Bulletman, the Human Bullet, a superpowered character who joined the G.I. Joe Adventure Team. This version of Bulletman made his debut in a one-page comic book ad, which saw him join the team alongside G.I. Joe and Mike Power. This Bulletman was a 12-inch tall figure with chromed arms and a removable chromed helmet who could fly down a zip line. Across the pond, Bulletman appeared in the UK as part of Palitoy's Action Man range.
It's the Action Man team on patrol looking for the intruder, strong man from another world. Action Man spots him with his eagle eyes. Too late. The intruder's got Tom Stone in a vicious bear hug. Atomic Man lets him have it with an atomic right. The intruder is stunned, but not for long, and the chase is on. Action Man checks out underwater in the Seawolf, the Action Team submarine that actually dives and surfaces. No luck. He takes to the skies with his turbocopter and spots the intruder's hideout from above. This is a job for Bulletman, the Human Bullet. That'll flush him out. And here comes Action Man in the capture copter. Mission accomplished. Action Man.
These days, Bulletman is highly sought after by G.I. Joe Adventure Team collectors, but it's very hard to find him in good condition due to the fragile nature of his chromed arms, as well as the fact that the old G.I. Joe Adventure Team toys were held together with elastic bands that disintegrate over time. But the 1970s was not the last time that Hasbro released a Bulletman figure. Hasbro developed a series of brick toys called Creon, which they hoped would be a competitor to Lego. As part of the Creon brand, Hasbro created minifigures called Creons. And in 2013, there was a blind bag series of Creon minifigures based on G.I. Joe. Wave 5 of that blind bag series included a character called the Human Bullet, who was a Creon version of the 1970s Bulletman. The Adventure Team version of Bulletman made his modern comic book debut in 2017 in the series Revolutionaries from IDW Publishing. Revolutionaries was an offshoot of the Revolution event, where IDW placed many Hasbro properties, such as Transformers, G.I. Joe, ROM, Micronauts, and Mask, into the same shared universe. In an adventure called The Secret of the Mummy's Tomb, wink, we meet the original G.I. Joe Adventure Team that preceded the G.I. Joe Real American Hero Team, made up of General Joe Colton, Mike Power the Atomic Man, and Bulletman. During the mission, the Adventure Team encounters not only robotic mummies, but the Decepticon Soundwave as well. And Bulletman uses his powers to smash through Soundwave's chestplate. IDW also fleshed out the backstory of the Adventure Team Bulletman. His real name was Richard Ruby, born in Clyde, Ohio. Ruby joined the U.S. Navy as an aviator and was later recruited to SEAL Team 6. After being honorably discharged from the military, Ruby pursued his dream of a career in Hollywood, where he became a stunt pilot. It was during this time that he developed his personal jetpack and bullet suit. After Ruby used his powers to save a small town from flooding, Joe Colton and Mike Power took notice and recruited him into the adventure team. After the adventure team disbanded, Ruby assisted Clayton Abernathy in helping to recruit members for their successor unit. In 2023, the 1970s Bulletman appeared again after a fashion. This 4-inch Bulletman was exclusive to Joe Fest 2023. It was created by a toy maker called Devil's Bargain, using tooling from Fresh Monkey Fiction's Eagle Force line. This figure is an homage to the 1970s Adventure Team Bulletman, with those chromed arms and the red jumpsuit. He also has a jetpack with some blast effects, and he comes with a shoulder holster and several guns. Also included was an alternate head, which is fully encased in armor and does not show his chin, as well as many sets of alternate hands. This is a very nice figure featuring a full range of articulation. He's got single jointed elbows, but double jointed knees, ankles, hips, shoulders. Very posable and a very nice homage to the Adventure Team Bulletman. This version of Bulletman also came with a file card that tells us about the character. And this Bulletman is really Jody Aquino Barr. Prior to taking up the mantle of his new identity, the Bulletman was an agent of the CIA, dismissed in disgrace for taking bribes and forging evidence. Now his talents as scientist, sharpshooter, and ballistics expert are put to use on an off-the-books task force. And this bio card also tells us that this version of Bulletman also uses robotic bullet drones that look just like him, and he uses them as misdirection and to surprise his enemies in battle. And the back of the card tells us that the character art for this Bulletman was done by Miguel Angel Ruiz. Our adventures with Bullet People do not end there. No siree, not until we've talked about The Tick. Based on the comic from New England Comics, The Tick received his own animated series on Fox Kids in 1994. One of the supporting characters from that series was the Human Bullet, voiced by Jess Harnell. A creation of the animated series, the Human Bullet was secretly a man called Mitch, who lived on the outskirts of the city. When there's trouble in the city, Mitch climbs into a giant cannon and commands his young son to fire me, boy, which launches Mitch from the cannon into the city and into the direction of the evildoers.
This looks like a job for the Human Bullet. Fire me, boy!
In 1994, Bandai created a toy line for the Tick animated series, and they released 3 versions of the Human Bullet. There was a 2-inch tall static minifigure, a wind-up figure of the Human Bullet inside his cannon, and this about 5-inch tall action figure. This is a very simple 4 POA figure. The Human Bullet can only move his arms and his legs. But he does have an action feature. He can launch his bullet head like a missile. But not very well. There's one more Bulletman on my list, and he's pretty obscure, but I thought it was worth mentioning. There is an animated film called Animal Crackers. And although it was completed in 2017, it was not released until 2020 on Netflix. The plot of the film concerns a traveling circus and a magical box of animal crackers. And it features an all-star voice cast, including John Krasinski, Emily Blunt, Ian McKellen, Danny DeVito, and Patrick Warburton. One of the characters in the traveling circus is a human cannibal named, you guessed it, Bulletman. And this Bullet Man is voiced by none other than Sylvester Stallone. I personally have not seen this animated film, but it sounds really, really weird. If any of you have seen it, let me know how you liked it in the comments. And that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed that little walkthrough history as we looked at different bullet men, bullet women, bullet dogs, weird bullet people, all kinds of bullets. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.